Good evening. It is often said that a cabinet reshuffle is a chance to reassert a Prime Minister's authority and refresh a party's image. Well, after the comings and a few goings at Downing Street today, it is perhaps fair to ask whether Mrs May's cabinet reshuffle has achieved either of those things. In fact, one might even gingerly say it all looked like a bit of a shambles. Education Secretary Justine Greening refused to move and walked out of government. Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt appeared to talk the Prime Minister out of moving him. A novel tactic when facing the sack or the shunt, it must be said, and worth bearing in mind. Meanwhile, over at Conservative headquarters, the party tweeted out its congratulations to Chris Grayling on becoming its new chairman. Yes, indeed, except the job actually went to Brandon Lewis, the Immigration Minister. It felt, I'm afraid, like it was just one of those days.
Behind the curtains, the Prime Minister trying to persuade her Education Secretary Justine Greening to move to work and pensions, in talks lasting 2 hours. Greening turned her down, bounded out to return to the back benches, claiming that her ministerial career was less important than campaigning to help people better themselves.
Will this reshuffle rejuvenate the party?
It wasn't the fresh start for the Prime Minister, a reassertion of authority that she'd hoped this reorganisation of a cabinet would be. There were whoopsies from the start. It had been an open secret for some time that this man, Patrick McLaughlin, was on his way out as Tory party chairman following the debacle for his party of last year's election. But what was a surprise was this tweet by Tory HQ welcoming Chris Grayling as McLaughlin's successor. It was a bit premature because, in fact, the Prime Minister was in the process of appointing the Immigration Minister Brandon Lewis as the party's new chairman.
Honoured and looking forward to getting on with the job.
With James Cleverly as his deputy.
Really looking forward to this. Thank you.
And Ben Bradley and Kemi Badenoch, who's been an MP for less than a year, as vice chairs.
There are always challenges, but we're up for it.
In the end, what was supposed to be a remaking of Theresa May's team in her own image changed fairly little. All the top ministers, Chancellor, Foreign Secretary, Home Secretary and Brexit Minister, stayed in post. Damien Green, who resigned before Christmas, had his responsibilities taken by another close ally of the Prime Minister, David Lidington, but unlike Green, he won't be the number 2 in the Cabinet. Sajid Javid stayed in post, but the word housing was added to the name of his department. And the other important changes were Esther McVey going to the Department of Work and Pensions, David Gauke as the new Lord Chancellor, Damien Hines replacing Justine Greening at Education, Karen Bradley going to Northern Ireland, and Matthew Hancock replacing Bradley at Culture, Media and Sport. It wasn't just Greening who'd said no to the PM. Earlier, Jeremy Hunt had refused to move from health to business, but unlike Greening, he actually persuaded Theresa May to let him stay and give him yet more responsibilities for sorting out the funding crisis in social care for the elderly. Not all the cabinet changes were judgments on individual competence and success. The Northern Ireland Secretary, James Brokenshire, decided to quit because he needs an operation on his lung.
My intent is to get on with surgery, get on with recovery and get back to my duties as MP for Old Bexley and Sidcup and also back to frontline political duties as well.
To make a bad day of anything worse for the Prime Minister, the leader of the Scottish Tories, Ruth Davidson, tonight tweeted how sorry she was that Greening had gone and what a great role model she'd been. Occupants of this place normally hope that reshuffles are demonstrations of their naked power to hire and fire. Theresa May, with a party split over Brexit and no majority in Parliament, isn't the first to find that moving ministers up, down and out can be tricky.
And Robert joins us now from Downing Street. Robert, to cut to the quick here, what on earth has been going on there today?
Well, look, this was supposed to be a reshuffle that reinvigorated Theresa May's domestic policies, in particular sorting out the housing crisis and the shortage of funding for health and social care. Now, quite how adding the word housing to the communities and local government's name sorts out a shortage of housing, quite how starting the day by thinking you're going to move your health secretary and then at the end of the day being persuaded by him to let him stay in health and take over responsibility for sorting out the funding of social care, how that indeed pursues that aim of reinvigorating those domestic policies, frankly, most people won't be able to fathom. Now, the point is, this was not a hurried or rushed reshuffle. It was precipitated by the sacking of Damien Green before Christmas. They had plenty of time to square off ministers like Justin Greening and Jeremy Hunt, and Theresa May and her colleagues singularly failed. This was supposed to be, as I say, a reshuffle to reinvigorate domestic policy, but also show that this is a Prime Minister not just in office, but also in power. I'm not sure Theresa May has succeeded in doing that today.
Well, Robert, it looks like 2018 is going to be another interesting year in politics. For now, thank you very much indeed.